All right, welcome everyone. Holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 17. Want to welcome everyone. We are holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 17. We're in verse 11. Still in verse 11. And we'll see how far we get today. The Torah says, Ki nefesh habasar v'dami v'ani nasativ lachem al mizbeach l'chaper al nafshosechem ki adam u b'nefesh yichaper. So here, again, the Torah says that for life, for the flesh, right, it's in the blood. I've given it to you upon the altar to make as a atonement for your souls, for the blood, with the life that makes atonement. So, spoke about this Ramban, right? Spoke quite a bit, about animals and causing harm, right? Causing harm to animals or making animals suffer. And how the Rambam had said that the whole point over here was that even though it was disgusting, blood's considered disgusting, even to the Chaldeans, but they themselves would eat blood in order to have power over demons, to know the future, or let's say come in contact with demons, know the future, even though the Ramban said, that might be true, but, that doesn't, no hints, in the Torah for such an explanation, right? We spoke about that. We spoke about the purpose of animals. And then last week we finished up talking about the purpose of creation, essentially the purpose of creation, and the fact that person, eats an animal. If you eat the blood, it's like you're ingesting the soul of the animal, right? That's pretty much we spoke about last week, and that finished up the Ramban. Now it comes on the Or Chaim Hakadosh. More than 100 years ago, the Or Chaim over here says that he says you have to understand. He says you have to know over here. What's the reason? Torah comes back and speaks about this, right? The fact that the soul is in the blood, right? The soul of the flesh is in the blood. So he says it seems like superfluous because we said it before. Right? I mentioned it before. Right? The fact that the person, their soul is going to get cut off. Their soul is totally going to get cut off. A Jew's soul if they eat blood. Because again, the blood is in the soul. But he says, even though person might be ingesting the soul of the animal, he said that could be enough reason to say it's forbidden, right? Enough reason to say it's totally forbidden. But he said you still have to investigate. Why does it say nefesh habasa? Why does it say the soul of the flesh, and it doesn't say the soul is in the blood? Right? The Torah here says, he says, ki nefesh habasar b'dam. Right? Translated over here as the life of the flesh is in the blood. So why are you telling me the life of the flesh, says Or Chaim? Right? Says Or Chaim Hakadosh over here. Why not just say the soul is in the blood? What does it do with the flesh? Why say the life is in the flesh of the blood? Forget about the flesh. It's in the blood. Right? Just make an easier statement. Say it's in the blood. So he said that still needs to be investigated further. So he says we can ask like this, that why doesn't the Torah say the flesh, the meat, is forbidden? What does the Torah say I'm not allowed to eat? The Torah says not allowed to eat what? The blood. Right? Not allowed to eat the blood. Very good. Can't eat the blood. Okay. Why doesn't the Torah say, you don't know how to eat the meat? And what's in the meat? The blood. That's what you tell me. Because essentially, the flesh, the meat, should also be forbidden. Why should it be forbidden? It's got blood in it. Even if you shechted it, even if you ritually slaughtered it, still should be forbidden. So he says, the flesh should really still be forbidden. And when a Jew eats it, again, it's applied to a Jew, not necessarily a non-Jew here, right? And it says that what? When a person eats it, the person causes the blemish in his soul. Right? A person eats blood. A Jew, let's say better. A Jew eats blood. The Jew is causing himself pain. Doesn't see it. But he's going to cause himself to sin over here by eating the blood. Right? In other words, he's causing the soul to have a blemish. Because if it's true, which we've seen, even though science hasn't proven it, the fact is that what we are, what we eat, and blood has a negative effect. And blood goes straight into the system. We saw last week, you don't need to break it down. It goes straight into the system. So it's like you're ingesting the soul itself. So therefore, what's the person doing? They're ingesting the animalistic soul, so to speak. They're causing the blemish to happen themselves. That's what they're doing. Right? They themselves are causing the problem by eating the animal. What did the Or Chaim HaKadosh ask? The meat should also be forbidden. But right? Because you're eating the meat with blood. But essentially, you're causing the problem. You're causing the blemish to your soul. Anytime a person sins. And again, we'll make this easy. Let's say they sin on purpose. Even if they don't know what they're doing. What's the problem? Going to dull the spirit, especially by kashrus. The more they transgress, the more they'll transgress more. Right? The Mishnah Perkei Avos says ethics for our fathers, mitzvah goreres mitzvah, vera goreres avera. Person does a mitzvah, wants to do another mitzvah. Person transgresses, wants to transgress again. Right? But you're causing it to yourself. See, there's nothing worse than that. If something else caused it, right? Something else seemed to cause it, okay. Right? That'd be a different issue. Then you can say, well, maybe it's on their own head, it wasn't my fault. Whatever it is. But if a person did themselves, it's worse. It's much worse. So over here, you caused the blemish in your soul. What does it mean you caused the blemish in your soul? They ate blood. That causes the blemish over here. On that we say, the soul of the animal is in the flesh. Right? So the animal's in the meat. So if you ate the meat and the meat had blood in it, you're doing it to yourself. So he says, you want to tell me the soul of the meat, the animal is in the meat, right? Not necessarily in the blood, right? Even though the blood's part of the meat. He says, no, it's not true. It's not true. What causes the blemish over here? Not just the meat. What's the essence of causing the blemish? Is the blood. Because the blood is in the meat. Right? He says, first of all, the blood is in the meat, and the blood itself flows through the meat. Right? We won't get gross here. The blood flows through the meat, and the blood keeps the meat alive. Right? It keeps the flesh alive. Right? If you didn't have any blood, or you're lacking a lot of blood, you die. Right? If you don't have a certain amount of blood. Because the blood keeps the person alive, keeps the animal alive. And really, the soul is not in the meat at all. Why? How do I know? How do I know, says Or Chaim HaKadosh? Because it says, Nefesh HaBasar B'dami, that the soul of the flesh, right, is in the blood. So it means that the soul is not in the meat. Where's the soul? In the blood. Because Or Chaim HaKadosh asks, why don't we say the meat is forbidden? Why don't we say the meat's the cause of it? Because the meat can't live without the blood, and the soul is in the blood. Yeah, so the soul itself, not the meat. And where's the soul? In the blood. So what happened over here? So he says a person, his livelihood, his livelihood, let's say better, right? Where does it come from? How does a person live? What's the lowest form of the soul? It's a nefesh, right? It's a nefesh behemoth. It's the animalistic soul. Very good. Where is that soul? That's in the bloodline, right? That's in the blood. So that connects the other parts of the soul. But if you don't have, if you don't have that connection, the person dies. But he wants to say like this: we just said, really, where's the soul? The soul is in what? The soul is in the blood. But he wanted to ask, maybe you tell me the soul's in the meat should be forbidden. He says, no. Because really the soul, the soul's in the blood's in the meat. So what's causing the soul to be alive is the blood. Seemingly it's the blood. But I got other aspects of the body. Just besides the flesh, what do I have? I have the flesh, I have bones, I have sinews, the other parts of the body, right, as well. So he says, you see that bones, the sweat of the bones, what do you call it, the sweat, that's literally how you translate it. It's the bones can last for a long time, right? Even when a person dies, what's left of a person? Bones. You have the bones. So even after many years, the bone's still around. Yeah, they don't fully disintegrate. It says, Or Chaim HaKadosh, by the righteous, none of this disintegrates. Their body's pretty much intact, if they're righteous. Doesn't rot. They're just, in a different state right now, but the body is pure. So the body doesn't decompose. Or it certainly doesn't decompose as fast. Right? But you can have many, many years, but the body's intact. That the flesh, the flesh of the body doesn't disintegrate. Because what should happen? All the flesh get eaten up. Right? And again, we'll keep this clean. A person dies. What's going to happen? It's going to disintegrate. Right? The flesh is going to rot. Let's say better. It's going to rot. But what about the flesh of the righteous? What about the flesh of the righteous? Doesn't. Right? Certainly doesn't. Because you see, even after many years, it's intact. Very much intact. Again, that's by the righteous. Now, says Or Chaim HaKadosh, okay, that's by the righteous. What about evil people? What about evil people? He says there are evil people that are compared to animals. And what's going to happen? By resurrection of the dead, they ain't going to be there. Because like a dog who dies, what happens in resurrection? Nothing. An animal goes poof. Kaufman's language. And even if the animal's buried, even if the animal is a reincarnated soul, meaning someone had to come back to this world to be put in the body of a dog or any other animal, what's going to happen when the dog dies? Or that other animal dies? The soul gets up to get judged. Yeah, get its final resting place, hopefully. But the dog, nothing happens. No offense, any animal lovers out there. There's no doggy heaven. Nothing happens. Right? A dog dies, goes poof, nothing. So evil people will not get up a resurrection of the dead. Now, he says an interesting thing. Why not? You tell me, very simple, they're evil. Evil people don't deserve to get resurrected. But he tells you a practical reason. Practical reason is body decays, body dries out, and the bones dry out. No way to resurrect them. Right? They don't have any fluid or whatever in order to be resurrected. Right? Certain bone back of the neck, the person still has intact. If they're going to get resurrected, comes from that. Without going into all that. So what happens? Very interesting, says Or Chaim HaKadosh. What happens over here? The bones disintegrate. They rot. They dry out. So there's no way to bring it back for resurrection. Says Or Chaim HaKadosh over here. Because you need some sort of liquid mechanism for the soul. The soul has to come back. But it needs to come back in a certain way, certain body, whatever that body's going to be. But what happened? What happened? The soul went out. Since, again, by an evil person, his bones are all dried out. It's like the soul has nowhere to come. Right? Just like the soul flies around like like the soul of an animal. Nothing happens. But he's telling you a more practical reason. The more practical reason is that seemingly over here, that if a person's going to get resurrected, whenever that's going to be, right? The soul's going to come into some sort of body, which not the normal type of body we understand. Whatever type of body it is. It still has to be something left of that body. Something left of the bones. If you don't have anything left of the bones, it's totally gone. Right? Totally into dust, as we would say. Right? Because the Torah says, you came from the dust, you go back to the dust, meaning you have to be buried. But literally could mean you disintegrate like the dust. You go back to dust. So therefore, says Or Chaim HaKadosh, your bones dry up. Your bones rot. There ain't nothing left. Now, what can we say very simply? Even if there's nothing left, couldn't God resurrect such a person? God can do anything, right? He can do that. Now, if that's true, right? If it's true, what would I say? What about people in the Holocaust? Got burned to death, gas, whatever. They're going to get resurrected. How's God going to resurrect dust? How's he going to resurrect ashes? Seemingly, God can do anything. So that shouldn't be a problem. We see even by an Andrew, by Titus. Titus of Russia. Or Titus as he's known. The Gemara says. So before he died, he gave a command. He said, when I die, burn my body, scatter all my ashes over the 7 seas, so the God of Israel can't judge me. So what happened? They brought up his soul. They asked him what happened after he died. So he said every day his punishment is God gathers all his ashes from all the 7 seas, because God can do that. And since God can do that, what did he do? He put them back together and he burns them every day for eternity. That's punishment. Measure for measure. He thought he's going to get away with it, not get punished later. Because how can God judge him if he's not in a physical form? And he's burnt and his ashes are scattered all over the 7 seas. Well, God can do anything. So Titus says, someone brought him up in a dream. And Titus says, God gathers my ashes every day. He said, what's your punishment? God gathers my ashes every day, puts them in a body, puts me back together, and then he burns me again. So seemingly, even if the bones dry up, right? Even if his bones dry up, the person's bones dry up over here, really seems like the soul is gone. There's nothing left of it. Could God bring it back? In theory, God can bring it back. There's nothing God can't do. We're not talking about that, right? I just threw that in as a bonus. He's not talking about that. The Or Chaim HaKadosh over here says talking about evil people. Talking about evil people. So he says evil people, they're similar to animals because they live their lives like animals. They're compared to animals. So they're not going to get up a resurrection. Now, what's the $1 million question? All evil people? Who's considered evil? Well, you'll tell me there are plenty of people today spitting God's face. They don't keep Shabbos, they don't keep kosher, they intermarry, right? They marry non-Jews. But, do they really know what they're doing, or do they have the status, like Carpenter would say, like a potato farmer, right? No offense to anyone's a potato farmer, or grew up in Idaho, right? They grew up knowing nothing about Judaism. Okay. But we said before, I mentioned last week, ignorance isn't bliss. There are certain red lines that even if someone doesn't know what they're doing, they're still liable. Right? They're still going to be seriously liable. Desecrating Shabbos is one in public. That's penalty, you get spiritually cut off. And intermarriage. I mean, plenty of other things also. But there are limits. There are limits even if you don't know anything. Right? If you don't know anything, so in a certain way, what you did is like by accident because you know what you're doing. Okay. God has a limit. He absolutely has a limit. You're going to say, well, even if they intermarried, they didn't know what they were doing. If you ask any secular Jew, at least if they're affiliated with the synagogue, according to the Bible, you're allowed to marry a non-Jew. Everybody will say, according to the Bible, no. But maybe it's not what the Bible meant. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. Webster's fifth definition. But everybody will admit if they're affiliated with the synagogue. They will admit it's forbidden. 100% forbidden. So if that's true, and there are red lines over here, why in the world would they get up a resurrection? You have to have a connection to God. Yeah, you'd have to have repented in your lifetime for doing things wrong. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, beginning in Pirkei Avos, every chapter, it says, Ko Yisrael, yesh lehem chelek l'olam haba. Every Jew has a portion of the world to come. Every Jew, so I had someone once say, every Jew, I also have a portion of the world to come, it just won't be as big as yours. It just won't be as big as yours. I said, okay, did you ever read Tractate Sanhedrin on the topic? Because then the Gemara goes on and tells you different groups of people lost the portion of the world to come. Not that I'll have a smaller portion. Who says you're going to get there? You have to be holding somewhere in the world, says the Ramchal. It says the Ramchal in Derech Hashem. The Ramchal says you got to reach a minimal level in this world. You got to be in this world, and you got to reach a minimal level in order to have a portion of the world to come. Now, does he tell us what level? He doesn't tell us. The Ramchal doesn't say. He just says the person has to reach a minimal level. Okay? And what happens if you don't reach the minimal level? Like the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, 2b3a, the Gemara says that if you don't prepare Shabbos, you don't eat on Shabbos. Right? You don't eat on Shabbos. So you got to prepare. That means you got to prepare in this world. If you don't prepare in this world, right? Very simple parable. You don't cook food before Shabbos. What are you going to eat on Shabbos? You got nothing. You got to prepare. You got to prepare. Not just a smaller portion. Maybe you'll get in this world. Maybe that's why it looks like wicked people have it easy. What's one simple reason? Maybe they're getting paid back for the one mitzvah they did, or a few mitzvahs that they did. Now they're actually getting paid back in this world. Right? So God has to reward them. Because it's got to be, it's got to be fair. If you do the right thing in this world, you get reward. If you do the wrong thing, you get punished, okay. But if God doesn't want to see you in the next world, what's he going to do? He'll knock you out. He'll give you your portion in this world. As we said before, someone who lives a long life, very long life, well into their 90s, could not be good for them. Right? For whatever reason, God gave them long life in this world. Could be. In the next world, they're in trouble. If they get there. Right? Maybe they're in serious trouble. Because the longer a person's alive, they don't do what God wants. It's worse. But again, God can't go against his own rules. God has to reward for the mitzvahs that a person did in this world. Even if he's going to knock them out in the next world. So how does it look? It could look like, yeah, you got plenty of evil people seem to have long life and easy life. Because God is setting them up to be destroyed in the next world. But again, according to nature, according to the way God set it up, let's say better, God has to reward those that did mitzvahs. He has to give them reward. That's only fair. And if not, that wouldn't be fair. So he can keep them alive a long time. Give them, plenty of money, plenty of desires in this world. In the next world, they get nothing. Right? So now, what does that mean for us? So again, here the Or Chaim HaKadosh says that evil people are compared to animals. That doesn't sound so flattering. Someone says, oh, I'm a secular Jew. You think I'm a dog? You think I'm like an animal? So what would my Rebbe say? He would say, let's look at how a person lives their life. Do they live with any morals? Yeah, maybe some, but let's say most people don't have a moral compass. They do what they want. They go where they want. They don't want to have to answer to anybody, right? They do what they want. You're going to have to answer. Right? So if that's true, why should they have anything? In spiritual terms. They don't deserve. But look how they live their lives. Are they any different than animals? Just going according to animalistic desires. Look at the news, see what people do. Whereas I would say, you want to know the pulse of the world, what's going on? Go to Walmart. Go to Home Depot. Hear what people are talking about. What are they doing? What are they interested in? It's all about desire. That's the Greek world we live in. It's all about desire. Worship of the body. Worship of money, food, entertainment. That's what it is. So are they any different than animals? It's the same thing as animals. Right? Procreate. They eat. They drink. They go to the bathroom. What's different? Say, oh, there's a major difference. Major difference. What does the Aramaic translation Onkelos say? When God breathed the spirit of life to man, what did he give them? A ruach memadelo, the ability to speak. Animals also speak. We just don't understand what they say. Right? We're not Dr. Doodle. We can't, play with the animals. But what's the explanation? The ability to speak means what? The ability to speak means the reason to make decisions. Animals don't make decisions. Yeah, they can choose to eat, not eat, this, that, but they're programmed DNA. We spoke about that. They don't have choice. They react to different things, okay? Right? But essentially, they're animals. Right? They're for our benefits. And whatever they do is based on instinct. So now, how can the Or Chaim HaKadosh others say the same thing across the board? That evil people are similar to animals. But what's the major difference? What's the major difference between man and animal? Decision making. Free choice. Animals don't have free choice. Again, you could tell me, they could eat, they couldn't eat, whatever. It's instinct. It's all based on instinct. But to say they have free choice, there's only one being in the world that has free choice. That's man. So if a person has no moral compass, and they're doing whatever they want, go according to one desire to the next, whatever it may be, right? You fill in the blank. Whatever it may be, very good. Deep down, are they any different than animals? Really? Are they any different? Seemingly not different. They're the same things. Maybe a little more sophisticated level. Okay. But there are some things, across the board, they're no different. Right now, people get really offended by that. Look at what he's saying, I'm an animal. What are you saying, I'm a dog? But look how they live their lives. What's important to them? The next desire, whatever it may be. Whatever their mind tells them to do or their heart tells them to do. That's going to bring more enjoyment to their life. Whatever it may be. Even though it probably doesn't. So what's the bottom line? Bottom line is most people are miserable. That's why a lot of people want Prozac. They're miserable. Who's most miserable? Usually, people have a ton of money. Because they have everything. They can have everything. So nothing means anything to them. Their power, fame, other things. But again, you have to look at how they live their lives. If they live their lives based on no morality, based on, again, whatever their heart tells them to do, or whatever their mind tells them to do either way, are they any different? Does it make them any different than animals? What makes a person different? Right? What makes a person different? Very simple. What we do. How we act. How we deal with others. How we make decisions. Animals don't make decisions. Right? They don't make decisions. Now, you're going to say, but people make decisions. People have free choice. Okay. That's true. What keeps somebody has a moral compass? Always act or try and act the best way they can, morally. That's going to be substantiated throughout time. They don't have anything. Whatever their mind tells them to do. Whatever their heart tells them to do. So who's in control? Very few people in control today. They see this, they think that, someone else tells them something. Their minds are mush. They don't think, they just act. What would have been forbidden in my parents' generation, 80 more years ago today, is a mitzvah today. Don't even think twice about it. Because, quote unquote, much more open society, even though back then, things were done. It was just, under, everything was swept under the carpet. There were plenty of things going on, even though it didn't make the news, let's say. We weren't living in Victorian England by any stretch. But he says, these people who just give in to their base desires will not get up at resurrection. They're no different than animals. The only thing that makes a person different, is free will that we have. But if a person's free will is turned against them, and it's only used based on what their desire tells them to do, bottom line, does that make them any different than an animal? Shouldn't make them any different. You see what goes on in the world? It's clear. If you don't have an anchor, right, if you don't have something, guiding you, then why should you be any different than an animal? Maybe a more intelligent animal, maybe. Grant you that. Right? Not going to make you more moral by any stretch. Right? We see that even by, quote unquote, the most intelligent people. Went to the finest university, see what university can produce. Anti-Semites. But you can have the greatest mind and be totally immoral. Right? What's a good example? Aristotle. Aristotle, one of the greatest minds in the history of man. Philosophy. You know what? Aristotle also did some terrible things. Also extremely immoral. In a lot of ways. Students caught him doing something disgusting. They asked him, what are you doing? How can you rate Aristotle, the philosopher, do this? He goes, listen, there's Aristotle, the philosopher. There's Aristotle who does other things. That doesn't fly in Judaism. Yeah, you don't compartmentalize. Doesn't mean we're perfect by any stretch. But you have to have guidelines. You have to have a guide. Right? And what's our guidelines? Torah. If you don't use the Torah's guideline, what's going to be? It could be no different than an animal. Because you got nothing guiding you. When people say, I could choose to do this and choose to do that, and why do you live like such a restricted lifestyle 10 times more happy than I am? I know it kills you, doesn't it? But what's the issue? If you can do whatever you want, you have no discipline. Forget about whether you have money or not, doesn't matter. But essentially, I could use my free will to do whatever. Nothing really stopping me. So what's the person going to look like? There are a lot of disgusting people out there. And some people will say, and I've heard this a lot of times, right? Some people will say this person, very nice person, very fine person. Beautiful person. Okay. Let me ask you, what defines who's a beautiful person, who's a good person? What's the definition of good? All right, I got someone in this conversation. They said, I'm a good person. I boxed them in a corner. Right, I boxed them in a corner. I said, what's your definition of good? I didn't go as far as to say, well, his name be blot out, may rot, wherever he is. He might have thought he was good doing what he was doing. And Pol Pot and all these other, screwballs out there, mass murderers. Can't compare him to them. Because they can say, what, you think I'm a mass murderer? You think that's how bad I am? But again, what's the definition of good? You don't cheat on your taxes. Okay. You have a certain level of morality. Yeah, that makes you good. Is that going to make you good 100% of the time? What's the true definition of good in God's eyes? We don't care about anything else. According to God, are you good? Well, which definition of God? Simple definition. What the Torah tells us to do and not to do. Right? Whatever applies to a Jew or a non-Jew. That's the definition of good. That's the definition of absolute morality. Because you need someone absolute to tell you about morality. The morality can't change. Morality is not relative. Doesn't change with time. I heard very much in the conservative movement. Times change. Yeah, so what does it do with Torah? Doesn't have anything to do with Torah. Right? So, yeah, there are a lot of nice people out there, but we're not judging their niceness here. What are we judging? But not for us to judge. God will judge it. God, the ultimate judge. Right? It doesn't matter what any of us say. God's the ultimate judge. If God says, that's great Shabbos. God says you give charity. God says you shoot away the mother bird and take the eggs. Many things you got to do and you got to keep. And if you don't do it, are you good in God's eyes? Now, if you tell me you got an evil inclination sometimes takes you astray and this and that, very good. That's a different issue. If you're a potato farmer in Idaho, no offense. Anyone's a potato farmer, grew up in Idaho, right? Mention it again. Person doesn't know nothing from nothing. Okay, God's going to judge them however he judges them. But keep in mind, they're not guiltless. As I mentioned, Pirkei Avos mentioned Q&A last week, clarified it, that a secular Jew who says that desecrate Shabbos and intermarry and other things, that they're better than righteous non-Jews. Right? If an Orthodox Jew says that, they're racist. Right? We clarified that. They're 100% racist, nothing to talk about. It's not just a club to belong to over here. You got to do what God wants you to do. Very good. And if you don't, just pay back. But how is God going to judge the person? Now you're going to say, you're not God, you can't judge, right? Nobody cares what we think. Nobody cares what I think or anyone else thinks, right? What's the Torah think? What's the Torah say? Right? Does the Torah say this is good or bad? And how far and how bad is it? Whatever. We have criteria. A lot of people, sweet people, nice people, don't mean to harm anybody. They're, upstanding citizens. Okay. That's not the question here. Question is according to this book, right? 5 books of Moses, whatever you want to call it. Does that person, are they the cream of the crop or not? Or anywhere in the middle? You want to tell me they're like everybody else there in the middle? Yeah. If they're spitting in God's face on a daily basis, they don't keep very much at all. Then they're in serious trouble. Because their definition of good and God's definition of good are never the same. They're not the same. Maybe they overlap. Maybe. Right? I'm in a generous mood a little bit. Maybe. Maybe they'll overlap. I tend to doubt it. In most cases. Right? So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh over here says man is similar to animals. Right? If they're evil. They do the same things. So he's telling you a technical thing. Why should they get up a resurrection of the dead? Their bones are going to get all dried up, all crushed, right? They'll be like dust. So it's as if to say, God can't bring them back. Because they're dust. Right? Again, we could ask a question on that. God can bring back anybody. If they were made into dust. If they deserve to come back. True. But he's telling you if that's the case, normally someone's going to get resurrected. Going to be something left of them. In this case, is going to be anything left of these people? No. Again, could God bring them back even if there wasn't? Yes. Talking about something very technical here. If they don't have anything left, their bones are basically dust. What happens? Nothing. They're dust. They ain't coming back. You got to be at a certain level. That's the point. You got to be at a certain level. Your body can't totally disintegrate. Otherwise, you're not going to get up, and no one's going to know that. But he's telling you that what? He's telling you that person reaches this state and a person's evil, this is what's going to happen. The body will disintegrate, right? They won't have their bones will be, pretty much like dust, like dirt, go back into the earth, etc. And that's it. Ain't nothing left. There isn't anything left. They ain't coming back. right? So that's why they compare it to animal. Because an animal, what happens when an animal dies? Again, an animal dies, goes poof. Right? Body rots. The flesh, right, sort of disintegrates. And they go back to dust. Is God bringing back dust for resurrection? No. Not bringing it back. And if a person is similar to an animal, an evil person, also not bringing them back. Right? There's a very, very big misnomer here. All Jews have a portion of the world to come. So I'll just have a smaller portion. But you spit in God's face every day. Why'd you get anything? You don't know anything. Potato farmer, I know this, that. Okay, but certain things, God's not going to turn away. He's going to, he's going to cut you some slack because that's great Shabbos. You didn't know any better. You know better. You could have found out. No one's going to have that excuse today, unless they really grew up in the middle of nowhere, had no contact with Jews whatsoever. Very hard to say that today. Everyone's seen a Jew somewhere, usually. Right? I'm not saying back in the, in the boondocks or whatever, that people have never come in contact with Jews. There are plenty of people like that also. Yeah, but Jew, someone who's a Jew. They could have found out if they wanted to. Most people have somebody in their family's religious. Usually, somewhere down the line. They could have found out if they wanted to. They didn't. So in a certain way, it's called a rebellion, even if they don't know anything. But ignorance isn't bliss. Depends what level. Right, which we've spoken about. But bottom line, similar to animals. Listen to how they chirp away. Listen to what they speak about. Chirp, 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 chirp. That's what they do. Some more, some less. What are they living for? Next gadget? Next new species of whatever they're going to eat? Like, what are they really living for? They're like, come on, you're being too cruel over here. What do you think? No one has any values and this and that? Or our family? What about it? Family's important, right? Right? Family can be an albatross also. We won't go there. But yeah, family, I live for my family. Okay. They live for their family. Very good. But how else do you live your life? It's not just your family. Yeah, you do things with your family, with your kids, and take them out, and this and that. But bottom line, that's the most important thing in life. That's what I'm living for. Ketchup or mustard on my hot dog with my kids, cherry on top. What are people living for? I'll give an example, a relevant example. Right? Everyone knows, or if you don't, you'll know now. Right? I grew up in Boston, all sports teams winning championships left and right, especially when I left. Just won the 18th banner. Basketball. Basketball team, the Celtics, very good. They had a parade of about 1.5 million people. I mentioned this before, and I'll mention now in this context. 1.5 million people. You have these guys, on these duck boats. You can Google them, whatever they are. Yeah. And they go around a certain route to get to City Hall. And you get all these people lined up on the streets, waving to them, some throwing balls, throwing shirts, get autographs, this, that. 1.5 million people. Kind of absurd if you think about it. Some say, it's a good thing for the city and money or whatever. There are people who got up 3 a.m. to go there, to drive there, to wave to these, whatever, these athletes. Okay. Huge thing, 1.5 million people. Beautiful weather, they said. Like all the good things. They're going to say, so what are you talking about? Who are they idolizing? Someone who can shoot a ball, stuff a ball, block a ball, whatever. 1.5 million people? That's a huge amount of people. That'd be like almost a third of this country going out. A third of the country. Okay, it's a real small country. Right? No bigger than the size of the state of New Jersey. Yeah. But imagine anyone in America, the whole state of New Jersey comes out, or a third of the state, or half the state comes out. The entire state to wave to these basketball players. For the split second, they're going to go around in these duck boats. And then, people are going to wave to them and they're going to wave back. Everyone's going to scream, yeah, whatever. Or talking about next year, this, that. Okay, I understand. It's a big thing. Sports team wins everything. Boston is old hat. They've won so many titles, all the sports teams. But think about it. No offense to any sports lovers out there. Think about it. 1.5 million people. That's an insane amount of people. Yeah. To be somewhere on the route of this parade, as these duck boats go by, so they can wave to these players. Does that make any sense? Logically? Does it make any sense at all? Doesn't make so much sense. I get it. They love the team. They're so happy they won. They can win multiple championships. Okay, I get it. But if you find out what some of these people do, behind closed doors, I don't think you'd idolize them so much. And people are going to say, who cares? I want to see him shoot a ball. I want to see him block a ball. Whatever, it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so think what I don't know, a couple of hours, whatever it was. But people are at different parts of this parade. Yeah, imagine. I mean, it is a crazy amount of people. They're only going to see them for like a split second as they go around. You're not like running in the procession, going up these duck boats, giving them high fives and all that. You're not doing that. I felt bad for, feel bad for the police. I still go with them on this whole route. Make sure nothing happens. Okay. But individuals not doing that. You're watching them for a split second as they go by. So someone in Boston told me, yeah, it was much better watching at home. You have to fight the crowds, traffic, this, that, the heat. Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. But everyone wants to show their appreciation. They want to show how happy they are. Unbelievable appreciation for someone who can shoot a basketball or dribble a basketball. Even if you grew up with it, think about it now. Think about the place Torah plays, in our lives. Imagine, La'avdil Elef Alfei Avdalos, bang, bang Tumul Ta'ara, right? We'll make a big distinction here between impurity and purity. Imagine you can see one of the greatest rabbinical authorities of our generation. Or just watch him pass by. Can actually go into him and speak to him. Yeah? Or you just saw him from afar. That person's made B'Tselem Elokim. He's creating God's image, but he's using God's image for what? For Torah. To see the person glows like a light bulb. You can see on their face. See how they've worked on themselves. And you can see there's a God in the world based on someone who keeps Torah like that. Isn't that much more respectful? I see a bunch of guys who can shoot a basketball. And who knows what else they do. Right? We won't go there. People say, it's great for the city. It's great for this. It's great for that. They play basketball, for goodness sakes. 1.5 million people? That's real dedication. Yeah, that's really self-sacrifice. It's insanity. Total insanity. Now, it would be better if they would have destroyed the city like a lot of other cities. They win a championship once in a blue moon, they destroy the whole city. Yeah. Who are they idolizing? Who in the world are they idolizing? They're idolizing someone in a tank top and shorts that can shoot a ball. Or hit a ball. Or kick a ball. I know as a sports enthusiast, and loves this type of stuff. Well, hey, what I'm saying, I get it. How'd they grow up with this? Yeah. But in the bigger scheme of things, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense, not to mention total waste of time. If that's really, the biggest prohibition, right? Let's say. But imagine, right? We'll make this a little more graphic. If I haven't made the point yet, make it a bunch of questions. I'll deal with them in a second. I'll make it a little more graphic. Yeah. Imagine, they're on these duck boats. Google it if you ever want to see it. They're on these boats, whatever. They're coming by. You're like a fly in the wall. And you hear all these people screaming, ecstatic, that they won the championship. Okay. It makes people feel good. Their city won. They're number one. Okay. This is a little bit absurd. For the travel at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, get a good place on the road, right? Or get a good spot or get there on time, whatever. Or people got up, a little bit later. Want to be part of history. Okay. Does that make any sense logically according to Torah? No. If you tell me there were great rabbis there, right? You have somewhat of a connection there, whatever. They represent Torah. Okay, that's one thing. That's one thing at that level. To be able to see them is a huge thing. You can have a totally different level of respect for who these people are. You're going to tell me for this? For this? God's looking down, like, what a waste. You got nothing better to do for 2.5 hours or more? Listen, super commentary and this, what's going to be next year? They're going to draft. But have everyone, as they go by, throwing stuff at them, the sign, or waving to them. Yeah, you're the greatest thing since sliced cheese or whatever. These guys don't have big enough egos as it is. Not all of them, but whatever. 1.5 million people, and that's what you're doing? Right? Are these people any different than animals? Say we love our sports teams and whatever. It's idolatry to a certain extent. To a big extent. This is who you idolize? You want to idolize? People that don't idolize them. I like the way they play. I want to see the way they play. Forget about upmanship, this, that, whatever. They want to see how they play. Even better when they win it. And they win it all. Huge thing. We're number one. Great. Have another few drinks. Get sloshed. Wow, we want it. This, that. That really what reality is? See if you grew up in a town, in a city, whatever. They never win anything. Okay. Or maybe they win something once in a very, very long time. I get it. Big thing to be ecstatic about. They say, oh, this city, probably one of the best cities, in the history of man when it comes to, winning championships in different sports. Okay. I hear that. But in your relationship to God, what does it do? What in the world does it do? Look who you're idolizing. Yeah. Says Or Chaim Akadosh over here, there are evil people similar to animals. Enough said. Right? That's what it means. Yeah, questions. Somebody asks, 1 second. Somebody asks, someone's family grew up in Soviet Russia, had no connection to Judaism. Okay. And then they were raised in America without a connection to Judaism. They count as Tinok Shanishba, for sure. They had no connection, right? It's like they're considered someone who was someone who was taken hostage by the non-Jews, right? Someone who grew up among non-Jews. Somebody like that never grew up with any knowledge, barely knew that they were Jewish, or brainwashed to boot, right? Yeah, so they'll have a din of being a Tinok Shanish, but now there are different levels here. According to one opinion, the most stringent opinion, if they knew that they were Jewish, Even if they didn't know what it meant, this is how far it goes. Even if they didn't know what it meant to be a Jew at all, they don't have a din of Tinok Shanishma. It's the most stringent opinion. Now, there are a lot of opinions anywhere in between. Right? Someone who grew up in a place like that got totally brainwashed. Right? So everyone would say, mostly everybody, would say they have a din of Tinok Shanishma. Okay. That doesn't mean they get a free pass. Right? But even if someone grew up not knowing anything, let me ask you. If they grow up in the former Soviet Union, they marry a non-Jew. Yeah? Is that sort of a red line, even if you don't know what you're doing? There are certain things that's great Shabbos in public. Doesn't mean you get an automatic free pass. There are serious consequences. A person may pay the price. Other things, it'll be done. It'll be like they did something wrong by accident. That's a different issue. Right? But it doesn't mean even the most severe things. Even the most severe things. No matter what they believe. How can somebody say, I'm not saying you're saying this, but how can somebody say, well, if they intermarry, they don't know any better, God's going to cut them some slack. I don't know if God's going to cut them some slack for that. Or desecration of Shabbos, or, they're homosexual, or whatever. Something very, very severe. There's repentance, to a point. But if they don't repent, they're in serious trouble. For a lot of things, they'll be looked at as if they did it by accident. But not everything. It does not mean they get a free pass. Doesn't mean that. Yeah. For some things, okay, it's like a slap on the wrist. Maybe for a lot of things. For some things, they're going to get slammed. Totally slammed. Because in today's day and age, you can tell me hundreds of years ago, maybe it's different. Right? Even maybe 100 years ago. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more. But if a person wants information, if they find, let's say, they grew up in communist Russia. Okay. Most Russians probably atheists. Yeah. Couldn't they, if they wanted to, like Abraham, they could look into the world and see, and see there's a world of design? Couldn't they figure that out by themselves, even if they're brainwashed? They could. 100% they could. God gave everyone a brain to think. Now, you want to tell me, society, look what society's done. Right? Right? Look what society has done. So to speak. Who says you have to give in to society? Didn't Abraham fight against society? I just read something earlier by Victor Miller, blessed memory, on Parsha Shlach. Right? Kal ben Yefuna and Yeshua ben Nun go against the majority. 10 other great people said, well, how can we go in the land? There are giants there. It's impractical. We're going to get slaughtered. We're like grasshoppers in their eyes. Practically speaking, isn't that true? No one's going to deny that. That's true. Look how big they are. Look how strong they are. Look at the fortified cities that they have. How are we going to tackle them? Now, you could say, well, maybe it's a lack of emunah, right? Maybe it's a lack of faith. They didn't think, God doesn't think God could do it. Maybe they're not worthy. But they fought against the majority. And they had the ability because of what Abraham did. Now he fought against the majority. Everyone was idol worshippers. Right? The whole world's a bunch of idol worshippers. Right? And he came to the conclusion logically, right, that there's a God. He runs the world. It's a world of design. Now, couldn't someone else come to that conclusion no matter where they grew up? Sure. 100%. So, a person's going to say, come on, how could I have ever learned about it? See, today it's very different. I would say today is very different because there's so much information out there. Not only is there so much information out there, most people today have someone, if they're Jewish, have someone in their family who probably came back to Judaism. Most likely. Some relative they have. Right? You want to tell me someone doesn't. There's so much information to get. It's easy to get if you want it. Right? So the Gemara says, we always say, you want to go in the right direction, God will help you. You want to go in the wrong direction, God will not stop you. Person has a choice. Right? Person has a choice. Again, not everything they're going to get slaughtered for if they do it. But there are certain things you're not going to get around. Right? That they're going to be in serious trouble for. Right? That's what says, invite to a wedding of such a person. Okay. Right? They made the wedding on Shabbos Friday night. Oh my. Yeah, that's pretty bad. So if you attend, it doesn't mean I'm putting a stumbling block before them. You could say like this. If a person, even without saying anything, right? Let's say a person looks like an Orthodox Jew. They look like an Orthodox Jew. And just by looking like an Orthodox Jew, isn't that putting someone to shame? Secular Jew? They can come up with all kinds of excuses why they don't do this, why they don't do that, doesn't fit their agenda, whatever. But if they know you represent the truth, that's why they hate Orthodox Jews so much. And we don't have to say anything. Forget about the army issue, other things. Every Jew has a spark inside them. And every Jew really inside knows what the truth is. But what are they going to do? They're going to make fun of Orthodox Jews to show they're going to belittle them. They're going to make fun of them. Why? Because they feel guilty. Why do they feel guilty? You haven't said anything. You haven't done anything. Well, why do they feel guilty? Because they think they're being judged. Right? People say, you don't think I'm Jewish. No matter what I think. If your mother's Jewish, there are no complications. You're Jewish. Well, they think, well, you don't think I'm a good person because I don't keep Shabbos or I don't keep mitzvahs or, whatever. It's not for me to judge. God will judge that. And if God says you're a bad person because you don't keep what you're supposed to do, right? So we keep what God says. We do what God says. King David says, I love all those that love God. I will fight against those that hate him. Now again, hate the person, hate the action, not the person. But think about it. Why should someone want to belittle Orthodox Jews? They haven't done anything wrong. We'll make it easy. They haven't done anything wrong. Yeah. I had someone once tell me many, many years ago. Someone says, it's a prominent doctor, right, in a community. He's like, I'm offended by the way you dress. I'm like, why are you offended by the way I dress? Or a white shirt, dark gray pants with or without pinstripes, or dark black, or black with or without pinstripes, or blue with or without pinstripes. I wear a suit and a hat, when I'm out. So I said, let me ask you. I'll get a mohawk. I'd shave my head, have ear piercings, who knows where. And I would smoke pot, on your roof and play the guitar all day. Would that bother you? This person thinking about it. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm going to give, moral values to my kids, this, that. You got to think about that. Why are they offended? Because they want to say, I'm also Jewish. I'm also as good. Right? Don't put me down. Not a question of putting anyone down. It's the question, what does God want from me? How am I supposed to act? You could say, I'll give a similar example. Let's say, and this is what happened many, many years ago. You had Orthodox Jews, visiting people's businesses on Shabbos, just by walking in. The person's embarrassed. Should be embarrassed. Yeah. trying to get them to close on Shabbos. So, what can I do? I need the money, this, that. At that point, he's telling me block in front of them. They have free choice. Brother lives near a Jewish neighborhood, whatever. They see all the Jews coming out of the synagogue, whatever. What do? They want to, go down the street in their car, playing horns, blast, music, to show that, they're just as valid, they can do whatever they want. See, no punishment, whatever. But why do they feel the strong hatred? I'll take it one step further. Mount Sinai, when God gave the Torah, Mount Sinai. The root of the word Sinai is Shin Nun Aleph, or Sin Nun Aleph. Means to hate. Means brought hatred to the world, the Medrash says, against non-Jews. Everybody hated the Jews. Why they hate the Jews? God gave them the Torah. Could have given anyone the Torah. They didn't want it. God went to all the nations, the Gemara says. Right? Avodah Zarah 2b to 3a. He went to all the nations. None of the nations wanted. None of the nations wanted the Torah. Why are they all jealous all of a sudden? Why all this hatred all of a sudden? Oh, now it's time between God and the Jewish people, and God loves you more than anyone else, and you're more, you are the chosen people, whatever. Yeah, God chose us, we chose him. They could have done it. They had the time up until Abraham, or at the time of the dispersion, right? Tower of Babel. They could have joined, or the Ramchal says up until God gave the Torah. So where's the hatred? Because there's jealousy, absolute jealousy. Yeah, what did Hitler Yamach Shemov Zikro say? We're the conscience of the world. We're the morality of the world. I'm going to destroy that. And he set out to do that. Thank God, eventually God stopped it. Right? We are the conscience of the world, for better or for worse. You look at the UN, the whole UN. Israel's been condemned more than any other country exponentially. Exponentially. Not that we care about the UN, we're not going to talk about politics. Yeah? It's crazy. And what's going on, what happened October 7th, happened with Texas and Mexico. They would have flattened Mexico like a pancake. No more Taco Bell, no more burritos. It's over. No questions asked. No matter how many innocent, quote unquote, people they killed. Yeah. Anybody care how many America killed went into Iraq? Killed thousands. Civilians. Anyone sit there protesting, graduations because what Assad did against his own people, 600,000 people, gassed them. Walk out and protest. What happened in the 1990s? What happened in Rwanda? The Hutus and Tutsis, 1 million people killed. They won't blink an eyelash. We said anything. Jewish people are different. We're looked at differently. We should be looked at differently. But doesn't make sense logically. Any other nation does not make sense. Trying to be as humane as possible, we get slaughtered all over the place. Oh, look how many kids you killed. Look how many. Yeah, because they're using this human shield. Doesn't matter. You're not allowed to do that. This is war. They're using them as human shield. What are you supposed to do? You throw out pamphlets. You tell them to leave. We're going to bomb. You do as much as you can do. It would be up to me. Right? No one's asking me my opinion, but I'm going to throw it out there. Be up to me. Somebody said that, give them the finger. That's what I would do. Right? Be a desecration of God's name, but if I would do it, in theory, that's what I would tell them. Are you out of your cotton picking head? Doesn't make sense logically. Yeah? And look what America did to all the Indians. Anyone care about that? Slaughtered them? Millions of people? Be like us or die? Nobody says anything about that. Yeah, but I digress here. Yeah, an Orthodox Jew going out looking the way they do, they make people feel uncomfortable. Why do they make people feel uncomfortable? Other Jews, what's the simple answer? Because of that spark in themselves saying, oh, I'm not good enough. You don't think I'm good enough. You don't even think I'm Jewish. I didn't say you weren't Jewish. I've had people say this. You got a chip on your shoulder. I have no chip on my shoulder. You want me to come out and say intermarriage is a good thing and that's okay. No, it's not going to happen. Torah says it's forbidden. At least half a dozen times. Yeah. You're not going to get me to say eating shrimp is good, and to each their own. The Torah doesn't tell me that. God says this is good, this is bad. I don't understand why and what the purpose is. But why do they feel guilty? What's the guilt factor? Because they think what you're saying, just by the way you look, is they are wrong. And they don't want to be wrong. They want to do whatever they want to do. And you can't tell them otherwise. Okay. Some people, it's a waste of time to speak to. It's like talking to a brick. Okay. Maybe, we should be better doing outreach, go to the ends of the earth to try and bring people back. Maybe. But if they're not going to listen, who says I have to? But, we're not going to go with that question either. It's a lot more complex. What's the simple explanation over here? They have that spark inside them that's gnawing at them, bothers them. You think you're right. You think, you got all the answers, yeah? So that you want to have a discussion. Let's discuss sources. No, you're closed-minded. You're right. I'm closed-minded. You're so open-minded. I'm closed-minded. Okay? You're not answering anything. You just want to do what you want to do. That's the whole point. An evil person is like an animal. They want to do what they want to do. They want to justify it. Where do they get off saying, I have a right to kill grandpa or a father or a sibling or whatever? They're going to call that mercy. Euthanasia, mercy. Isn't that murder? Isn't that any different than shooting him in the head? It's murder. 100%, it's murder. We give them the right to say what quality of life is. Doesn't God give life, take life away? And how do these things work if they do it against whatever? These are complex questions. But again, what's the bottom line? The bottom line is they want to do what they want to do. Right? So you're not putting a stumbling block in front of someone. Secular Jew makes a wedding, invites you to the wedding. Now, how in the world can you stop by and go? Even if it's in walking distance. If they married a Jew, you don't have to get married on Shabbos. They get married before Shabbos. Have the party at night or whatever. You could do that. I mean, obviously no music, but right. But having the whole thing or whatever. I know someone got married. I don't know if they finished the wedding at that time, but the wedding was on Shiva Sabra Tammuz, fast day. They get married on a fast day. It means you don't care. They used to have back in the day, many, many years ago, before we would have these Yom Kippur parties. Yom Kippur! The holiest day of the year. There's a certain limit. If I was God, put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache. If I was God, for goodness sakes, the holiest day of the year, God ain't turning a blind eye. Not for that. Oh, they don't know any better, this and that. Certain things, again, they'll get punished like they did it by accident. Certain things, they're in serious trouble. So by showing up at a wedding, yeah, I'm not putting a stumbling block in front of them. You say, well, I like to stay, but I can't listen to music. Yeah, I'm not putting a stumbling block. They have free choice. If you have to organize it, you were part of the festivities in other ways, that would be an issue. That's helping them transgress. That's a different issue. Hope you didn't do that. Well, if you're not Jew, then it doesn't matter, right? Because this wouldn't apply. But if a person was a Jew, yeah. But a person could say, and it's wrong, but a person could say that just by us showing up, doing what we're doing, that's making secular Jews feel bad. It can't make anyone feel bad. It's not my problem. 100%, it's not my problem. Why isn't it my problem? Because they're doing things against what God says. Now, you represent the Torah and what God wants. Very good. So even if that's true, and I walk by the way, and they feel bad. They feel bad on Shabbos, they're doing whatever. That my fault? Right? I'll give an example. Someone walks to the synagogue, on Shabbos, a Jew walks to the synagogue, he sees his Jewish neighbor, secular Jewish neighbor, mowing the lawn. So what would somebody do? They're going to rebuke him, they're not going to listen anyway. Right? Maybe you don't have an obligation in this case. What a person do, you wish him good Shabbos, you walk on the way. You don't say anything, you just wish him a good Shabbos. Whether you should say something or not, it's a different issue. We're not going to go there. But the point is, don't you think this person's going to feel bad? That they're mowing the lawn and you're walking to synagogue? I mean, I don't know if they're really going to feel bad. Is it going to get them to think a little bit? Maybe. And let's say you walk in such a way, it makes them feel bad. Let's say. Did you transgress anything? You didn't transgress nothing. It's their problem, not yours. You're not advocating for them to do what you're doing, right? But they feel this thing inside themselves, like, oh, he doesn't think I'm Jewish. I think it should be good Shabbos, but he doesn't really think I'm Jewish. So the question, would I think or not? Right? Isn't that person now on the defensive? Of course they're on the defensive. But he's going to say, oh, you don't think I'm Jewish, because of what I do. Well, it is true. That's great Shabbos in public. You have a status of a non-Jew, but that's not the point. They're already on the defensive. I was in the States a few years ago, and someone said, yeah, you eat, it's kosher food and this and that. No, that's this, that's that, whatever. I didn't ask for that. I didn't have to get smacked upside the head. Person wants to accommodate me, get me some kosher food. Good. If not, I'll bring my own food. No big deal. I'm not ramming it down someone. Oh, you think you keep kosher? Why is someone on the defensive? Why in the world is someone on the defensive? I didn't say anything. I was once somewhere. I'm not going to say where. I was once somewhere. Someone said, well, can't you eat anything? We feel so bad. I was like, don't worry, I got my crackers. I got this. I could have said, you know what? If you really wanted to make me feel comfortable, you should got me kosher food, but they didn't have to. I didn't ask them to do that. I never would have asked someone to do that. They wanted to do it, good. If not, I'll deal. That's not going to be a problem. Not going to be a problem. Yeah. But now you're going to feel so bad. Now you're going to feel so bad for what you did. And you're going to make a whole big thing about it. Someone's going to make a whole big thing about it. Oh, come on, can't you eat anything? What about this? What about that? Whatever. Like, I'm not even having this discussion. There's no discussion. Finished. I could have made it very graphic. Well, you didn't make anything for me, so what do you want? I got my own food. Don't worry about it. I just try to play it down. You're going to make me feel guilty? I'm not going to make them feel guilty, right? But deep down, it's like, oh, come on, can't you compromise? Can't you this? Can't you that? It's uncomfortable being around such a person. Everyone's eating, you're not eating anything. Yeah, because I'll trade. Okay. You made your choice. I made my choice. Move on. Now you're going to make a big thing about it? Why can't you eat anything? Come on, can't you eat this? Can't you eat that? There's not so. I didn't ask for that. I came for whatever reason. Yeah. Made my presence known. Okay. Very good. You don't want to accommodate me. It's fine. I'm not losing any sleep over it. Someone said, but you put someone in a bad situation. I didn't do anything. I came to show solidarity for this thing, whatever it was. Good. You feel bad? Feel bad. Right? It's not my fault. Now, someone here says husband was reformed. Wife's family irreligious. Okay. Right? Right? And upset the reform rabbi was going to be present. The whole thing is very much against religion. The whole thing is, like, what are you going to do? Yeah. So you tell them. You tell them straight out. Jews shouldn't get married on Shabbos. Sorry to say. Jews don't get married on Shabbos. I'm sorry, I can't come. Whatever. That's not putting a stumbling block in front of them. They can say, what do you mean? We believe Shabbos differently. Why can't you be a Kohen? Like, this conversation goes nowhere. May go nowhere. Or they might respect it and say, okay, I get it. Whatever. But that's not putting a stumbling block in front of someone. Putting a stumbling block in front of someone's pretty, it's pretty clear cut. You have a Nazarite in front of you, which person cannot be a Nazarite today, take the Nazarite vow because you can't bring any sacrifices. But it'd be like you have a Nazarite in front of you and you put grape juice in front of it. Or wine. Right? Now you can say, well, you can get wine and grape juice anywhere else. You're right, but you put it in front of them. That's a stumbling block. Or you put an idol in front of someone that would worship it. That's a stumbling block. That's not a stumbling block. It's uncomfortable. I would say it's uncomfortable, yeah. Maybe. It's not a stumbling block. Somebody asks, let me get this question here. Somebody asked before, when you drink wine and grape juice with the food, but not on Shabbos, should say a blessing, right? 100%. Even if you ate bread, right? Even if you ate bread, you drank wine with it, bread does not cover wine, right? So wine at any time during the meal, you need to make a blessing on, right? That is true. Should have said blessing on wine and grape juice first, and then wash and say a motzi. No, if it's not on Shabbos, right? If it's not on Shabbos, then you would wash your hands for bread, eat bread, and if you're gonna have wine, have it in the middle of the meal. Technically, you could have it before, and it'll be covered during the meal, but it's better to wash first, right? It'd be better to wash first. Are they punished for not knowing that they are Jewish? No. If there's no possible way, let's say like this, if there's no possible way they could have found out that they were Jewish, then they're not punished. If they could have found out they didn't want to, or something like that, if they're totally under onus, it's against their will, they never knew. Right? They never knew. Then they're not punished. Right? They shouldn't be punished. Or maybe they're punished a little bit, but if there's no, again, if they're under onus means it's against their will. They never could have found out. Right? If they never could have found out, then they're under onus. It's out of their control. Once they find out, and they find out that they're Jewish, then that's a different issue. That is going to be a different issue. Once they find out, they decide they don't want to look into it or whatever, that's a different issue. Now, they know they're Jewish. Yeah, what do they do with it? What do they do with it? Good question. They don't do anything with it, they'll be liable for a lot of things. Yeah. They would definitely be liable for a lot of things. And now, it could depend why I don't want to look into it, but in general, if they find out that they're Jewish, if, let's say, 100% they are Jewish, and they decide they don't want to have anything to do with it, they want to, they want to stay a Christian, this and that, then they're in trouble. Better that they never found out. If they never found out, they're under onus, different issue. But my only question is, what if they could have found out? If they could have found out and they didn't want to, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. The liability is much greater. How are they going to be judged before they found out? If they found out, they shouldn't be judged at all. There's no way they could have known. Unless God sees that they could have known. Yeah. If God sees deep in their heart they could have found out, and they didn't, different issue. If there's no possible way, let's say like this, there's no possible way they could have found out and they die. And God says, by the way, you were Jewish, and you shouldn't be doing this and that and the other thing. But they have a very solid claim here. Their claim is no way I could have found out. If God agrees, then the punishment is much less, if any. They shouldn't be punished. Why should they be punished? There's no way they could have found out. If there's a way they could have found out and they didn't, it's a different issue. Right? It's a very different issue. Somebody asks, one second. Someone asked, there's a different, yeah, so even if you have to inform them why you can't go, again, that's not putting a stumbling block in front of them. You tell them what they're doing is wrong. That's why you can't go. I mean, I do it in a nice way, wouldn't be so blunt, but that's not putting a stumbling block. If they do it, they do it. They have to be, they should be told they shouldn't be doing it. But, even if they grew up Reform or one of them's they're religious, I don't think that matters. Right? Still should be told what they're doing is wrong. That's not putting, they say, well, I grew up Reform. Well, that's not an excuse. So what if you grew up Reform? Well, that's what I was taught. Yeah. And when you were younger, you were taught about the tooth fairy, but you didn't believe in that. So why should you believe in this? You got free choice. Right? Oh, it was never taught properly. Okay, you could have. I thought putting a stumbling block in front of them. Someone asked, I'd read the book of Book of Leviticus. Yes. I think it's a good book to go through. Right? Even for a non-Jew. Is it similar to Moreh Nevuchim? Moreh Nevuchim is a different type of book. Moreh Nevuchim is the guide for the perplexed. A lot of the book of Moreh Nevuchim tries to go mitzvah by mitzvah about why we do certain mitzvahs. Trying to give rational reasons why we do certain mitzvahs. The Chol Vavos, Duties of the Heart, totally different book. Totally different type of book. Right? It's there about taking self-accounting. It's there speaking about Amun and Bitachon. Right? The Moreh Nevuchim is not so much in vogue today. Right? The Guide for the Perplexed by Maimonides, because it was written because so many Jews were going astray after philosophy by Aristotle and Socrates. Right? So therefore, today it's not so in vogue. Right? I wouldn't say it's so in vogue today because, most people today, biggest question they're ever going to ask, I put ketchup or mustard on my hot dog. It's not about philosophy. Right? But again, a good part of the book is also about learning, rational reasons, for the mitzvahs. Chovos Vavos Duties Heart also speaks about Amun and Bitachon, right? Belief and faith in God, and proof that there's only one God, right? At the beginning speaks about that, and the other aspects, but it's very different, very, 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 very different. Moreh Nevuchim is not so easy to go through, just because it was written in philosophical Arabic, and then it was translated into Hebrew, and then it was translated to English. Right? I would say the Chol Vavos is also not so easy to go through. Right? The language kind of hard also. But I would think the Duties of the Heart is a much more crucial book than Guide for the Perplexed today. Right? For this generation, nothing to talk about. Right? And also, previous generations as well. But again, the Rambam was writing in a time where people were going astray left and right because of secular philosophy. Shall I skip and start with Shar Bechina? Yeah. I would say you should read the first part also. Why we believe in one God. Other people would say, it's very hard to go through, but I don't know. I think you try and read that also. But yeah, you can start with if you don't want to do that, you can start with Shar Bechina, with the gate of reflection. Yeah. Question. 1 second. How long did Moses found out that he had to make changes to leave Egypt? Well, the time frame? Good question. He wasn't young when God came to him. He came to the Jewish people. I think it was like in his 80s or like his 70s, something like that. When God told him to go to, he told him to go to Egypt, right? Once he found out, I think he always knew he was Jewish. How long till he found out did he leave? I don't know what the time frame is. Not sure what exactly what that time frame was. Somebody asks about Jewish texts. Okay, let's see. What about Jewish texts? What's the most fruitful way to study Jewish texts? Well, I'll tell you like this: no one can learn. No one, if a person wants to learn Torah, right? Even if it started from Genesis, even though Genesis is very hard to go through because a lot of it's Kabbalah when it talks about creation. Creation of the world. But the way to learn for anybody really is to read the text, read the verse itself, and then think about what the verse says. Think about what you think the verse means, without looking at any commentary. Right? Then I would say, then you see what Rashi says, or then you see what other commentaries say. Yeah. Then you see what you thought and why they say what they said. Right? First, you have to understand what they said. Right? What the commentary said. Then you got to figure out, okay, right? Like we try and do over here. You look at what Rashi says, or some of the commentaries say, and why are they saying what they're saying? In other words, what's missing or added in the text that should be there, shouldn't be there, and what they're trying to tell me. Yeah, the Or Chaim over here is very good, right? I mean, it's always good, but doesn't need my agreement over here, right? Because what's the question he asks? Question he asked is, why does this verse come back and say again? Why does the verse come and say you can't eat blood? Right? I already have it before, it says you can't eat blood. I already have it later, it says you can't eat blood. Right? What's the Torah coming to add over here? Right? That was one thing he asked. And the other thing he asked, which we spoke about, why does it say nefesh habasar bedom? Why does it say the soul of the flesh is in the blood? Why do I need the soul? Why do I need the meat, the flesh? Couldn't the Torah have told me nefesh badam? The soul is in the blood, right? Because again, what's the translation here? Translation here is, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. Why don't you just tell me the life is in the blood? Why mention the flesh? It's a good question, right? Very good question, right? In other words, you have to dissect what it says, right? If you want to learn good, right, and you want to learn really well, first, what does the text tell me? Now, the text can tell me something, but if I already know it somewhere else, why is it repeated, right? I'll give an example. Torah says 3 times, don't cook a calf in its mother's milk. Yeah? Why does it tell me that in the places that it tells me? What's the connection with what was said before? But even better, why does it say it 3 times? Right? That's an obvious question. Right? Sometimes you look at the text and you say, well, it's out of context. Right? If you look at the beginning of Parshas Vayakil in the book of Exodus, right? Chapter 35, I think, or 37, where right before it's talking all about the tabernacle. All the loops, the clasps, the boards, everything about the tabernacle, yeah? And then the Torah tells me you got to keep Shabbos. What's the obvious question? Before knowing anything else, what's the obvious question that we should ask? Don't I already know I have to keep Shabbos? Hasn't Shabbos already been mentioned? Yeah. Been mentioned a number of times. Right? Says you can't cook. Says before that. Says you cannot carry. Says you can't light a fire. But what's it doing over here? Why in the world are you telling me for chapters about the building of the tabernacle, the loops, the clasps, the boards, and all this? What does that do with Shabbos? What's the connection to Shabbos? Rashi asked the question. Others asked the question. Yeah? Well, we should ask the question. It's an obvious question. Right? So before you look at any commentary, you think. And I'm not going to say you're going to think an hour on it, but think of what the verse says. What is the verse trying to tell you? What is the verse not trying to tell you? Right? No, over here, same thing. Tells me can't eat blood. Didn't we already say can't eat blood? We said it before. Right? We said it before. Because the blood is the soul. You're going to get spiritually cut off. Didn't we already say that? So first, what is the Torah telling me? Do I know other things that may contradict this? Do I know other things that may enhance this? Then you look at the commentaries. You see what Rashi says, see what others say. Right? And see either what you missed or what are they asking? Or what are they not asking? Right? That's how you learn. But the first thing is, what would you have thought? right? Talmud's no different, right? A guy looks at a piece of Talmud. Talmud says whatever it says. You're gonna. So the question is, why is it saying what it says? What are they disagreeing about? Or what do you think they're disagreeing about? Let's say you have 2 opinions, 3 opinions. Yeah, what's the crux of the argument? Then you see what Rashi says, or you see what Tosfos says, see what other commentaries say. Then you see what you missed or what you didn't miss. In other words, what's Rashi commenting on? Why does he not agree with others? Why does the Rambam disagree? Right? That's how you learn. But you got to think for yourself first. Right? One of my rabbis always used to say, don't read it like a newspaper. Think. What is it saying or not saying? What is it coming to add or not add? Now, sometimes these are picayune details. There could be a letter that was added by one commentary, wasn't added by someone else. Could have major ramifications. Yeah. Why or why not? Doesn't really matter, for this argument. But that's what I would say. But you got, first of all, most people won't do this because they're lazy, right? Why, what are they going to do first? They'll read the verse, right? They'll read it whatever language they understand it. Okay. And then they'll look at the commentaries. Very good. But you're not necessarily going to get what the commentaries are saying. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, right? You're not giving yourself a chance to understand really what it says or really what it doesn't say. Now, I remember when I first learned how to learn, most places won't do this, and that is you learn without any commentary. You learn the Mishnah without any commentary. You learn the Gemara without any commentary, right? Then you go, then you hash it out. What do you think it means? Right? Go back and forth what it may mean. Then you go to Rashi. Then you see what he adds or what he doesn't add or whatever, right? That sharpens the mind because then you have, you have to think what it's saying over here, right? When I was first learning how to learn, there's a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, 3rd chapter, it talks about shofar. It says every shofar is a horn. Right, but not every horn is necessarily a shofar. Now, if you don't have any commentary, what's the difference? If a shofar is called a horn, right? We'll just flush this out for a second. If a shofar is called a horn, why can't a horn be called a shofar? What makes a shofar and not a horn? Or vice versa? Now, if you don't really have any background, this is not an easy question. Because you don't know what the context of a shofar is. What type of it? So then you're going to ask the question, okay, maybe it comes from a different animal. Maybe only certain animals are have a horn that's called the shofar. But other animals have a horn, it's called the shofar. Oh, that's a distinction. Without knowing anything, that would be an obvious conclusion. Right? The question is it the right conclusion? Okay, we're not going there, but that would be a question, a legitimate question. Some things are called the horn that's not called the shofar. Why not? Why shouldn't it be, why not? So simple answer is because a shofar is something very specific. And it doesn't mean it should be called a horn. Right? Or, a horn doesn't necessarily fit that criteria. If it does, it's called the shofar. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But how do I know if it is or not? Good question. Very, very good question. That's an obvious question. Right? That's an obvious question. Now, you see what the commentaries say. That shofar has to be from a certain animal. A horn doesn't necessarily have to be from a certain animal. Right? So there's different things going on here. And how to look at it. Right? So that's one thing. Now, there's a follow-up question, I'm sure. Follow-up question is Rashi's commentary standard? Yes. That's the first commentary anyone goes to. Right? Unless you're learning from Arab Scroll. If you're learning from Arab Scroll, they're going to probably translate according to Rashi's explanation. Right? The Gemara, not necessarily like that. Maybe it will. Right? Not just translate the words, but give you what it means in the context. Rashi is the main commentary, for sure. right? Certainly in the Torah, certainly in Tanakh, certainly in Talmud, no question, right? Rashi's simplest explanation. They say Rashi before he died was trying to even make a simpler explanation, right? Or Rashi can't explain it according to a simple explanation. Like at the beginning of Genesis, it goes according to Medrash, right? It'll go according to Medrash because simple explanation doesn't make sense, right? It's very hard to make sense out of it. But that's the first commentary you go to, right? A person more advanced, okay. Then you look at the Ramban, you look at the Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra's more like, trying to go through grammar, right? He was a unbelievable grammarian, dissecting the text according to grammar, right? So, the Ramban flushes out more. Maybe some things according to Kabbalah a little bit, but, a lot of times, bring down Rashi, either we'll agree or disagree, right? But, you have other great commentaries. You got the Malbim, you got the Or Chaim HaKadosh, you got the Kli Yakar, the standard commentaries on Chumash. Again, some of these things are, much more in depth. Some of them, Or Chaim, a lot of times try and explain things according to Kabbalah, right? Not always. The Ramban very much, steeps in Kabbalah, but again, he also gets to, simple explanation, as well. These things have to be learned, right? You got a lot of great, commentaries, standard commentaries. Again, you got Rashi, Ibn Ezra, the Ramban, right? Kli Yakar, Or Chaim, right? Those are standard commentaries on Chumash Tanakh. You got Rashi, you got the Radak, David Kimchi, blessed memory, standard commentary. Also, you got the Malbim, right? He flushes things out a lot. The Abarbanel, right? On Tanakh as well. You got the Mitsudis that explains what some of the words mean. Mitsudis David, Mitsudis Sion, also. But again, once a person knows how to learn, that's a different issue. These things have never been translated. Right? I don't have a translation of the Malbim in English or the Ramban. I think you do have a translation. I think you do have. I don't think it's all been translated. I'm not sure if it's all been translated, but it opens things up in a in a major way. But you got to think. What the Ramban will say, I disagree with Rashi because of this. Right? In this case, he brought down the Ramban. Nachmanides brought down the Rambam and the Mor Nevuchim, right? The guide for the perplexed, right? So the Rambam. So again, what did the Rambam say? The Rambam said, why they eat bloods? Because they wanted to have connection to demons and to know the future. Because that's what the Chaldeans did. Okay. So the Rambam says, very good, upstanding explanation. There's only one problem. Where do you see that in the text? That's an obvious question. Yeah. Not belittling the Ramban, God forbid. Yeah, it'll be greater than me in 50 lifetimes. I'll never reach the Ramban's toenails. Yeah, and most other people won't either. Right? Not anybody will. But he asks a very strong question on Maimonides. And he says, okay, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with what he said. What he said might be true. Where do you see that in the context of the text? He's asking a very simple question. Doesn't say that. Doesn't even answer that. But he doesn't knock him out because of it. He just says that can't be simple explanation here. Because it doesn't make sense. According to the text. It's not hinted anywhere in the text. Yeah. What does it mean by the text of 70 different faces? It means there are a lot of ways to interpret it. Right? The Ramban a lot of times goes according to Kabbalah. Rashi goes according to a simple explanation, unless he goes to Medrash, right? If you can't explain it otherwise. Other commentaries go more esoteric or less esoteric. Yeah. But, some are based, they look at the verses and see what the ramifications are according to Jewish law. Some of them more interested in Medrash and why certain things contradict. Right? But there are a lot of different ways to learn, and I will qualify this by saying that you have to be within certain parameters. You're going to say, well, someone can say, well, this Reform Rabbi says my opinion is just as valid as Rashi. That's not true. You're outside the parameters. You're looking at things not from the Torah perspective. So we don't care what you have to say. If it's within parameters, okay. But see, for our generation, say, well, I disagree with Rashi. You have to have someone in that generation that disagree with Rashi. You can have the Ramban disagree with Rashi. You can have the Rambam disagree with Rashi. You have someone, close to his time period that can disagree with him. You yourself, we're nobodies. Everyone in this generation, even the greatest rabbi generation, my Rebbe, it's nothing compared to Rashi, the Ramban. Nothing. No offense to him. And he'll admit it himself. Nothing. It's like an ant compared to them. Now, we'll try and explain what Rashi meant, or what Rashi said, or what the relevance is. Right? But to disagree from a previous generation, you have to someone either in that generation disagreed with them, right? Otherwise, you can't disagree with the previous generation. They're greater than us, much greater than us, right? We have to try to understand what they said, right? But, if you're coming generations later, who are you to say, oh, my explanation is just as valid? Well, obviously, if you had a question and Rashi didn't ask it, the other commentaries didn't ask it, I mentioned this before, that means it's not a valid question. Right? As bright as a person may be, that doesn't matter. Someone else would have asked the question. If they didn't ask the question, it's not a question. Such thing as new ideas in Torah. Nope. King Solomon says himself in Ecclesiastes, "Ein dvar chadash tachas hashemesh." Nothing new under the sun. Right? All the great commentators, if they didn't say it, then it can't be true. We're not coming up with any novel ideas. They're already brought down in the world. In different levels. So we're not, we're just taking great ideas from other people. We're not coming out with our own ideas. Right? That's what I would say on that. Again, everyone has their own style. Some people like to look at things like, so much in depth. Some people like to look at things, quicker, different things, but we're not coming up with novelties, our own novelties, so to speak. We're not coming up with something no one's ever thought of. Right? We may embellish it, maybe look at it maybe in a little bit different way, but it's not new. The idea isn't new. Right? If it's something that no one's ever brought out, if it's something no one's ever brought out, that's not a question. Right? Then it wouldn't be a question. But again, there are parameters. And if a person is outside those parameters, then it's not a question. Right? A person will think, oh, what I say is just as valid. It's not just as valid. You have to understand, when Rashi comments, or the Ramban comments, or any of these commentaries comment, they had all the Midrashim in front of them. They had all the Gemaras in front of them. Yeah? In other words, they knew these things like the back of their hands. There are times where a commentator will say, well, this commentator never would have said that if they would have seen this. They would have seen this text or that text or something else. Okay. But in general, they had everything in front of them. So they're picking and choosing why they're saying like this and not like that. Yeah. So they're not coming out with any, we're not coming out with any novelties today. Certainly not. Right? There's nothing new under the sun. So essentially, we're piggybacking on much greater people, than us. Our job is just try and decipher the text, what it wants from us, what I'm supposed to do. Doesn't mean you can't ask questions, try and come up with, interesting ideas and different things, but most likely you'll never come up with something that's never been thought of. Right? Yet, it's a lot easier today also, because a lot of great people brought their ideas to the world. It's very easy to tap in because they already brought it to the world. Right? But say it's my own idea. I once, had this question, I didn't see anyone asked it. I figured it's not a question. I'm looking here, looking there, this, that. Finally, I saw one of the later commentators ask the question. I was ecstatic. I found someone who actually asked the question. I just didn't realize how detailed the question was that I asked. Yeah. It was like depended on like 6 other different factors. So here I came up with with a question. Okay. I thought it was an interesting question. Whatever. It was much more complex than I even thought it was. I had other things that I came up with certain ideas. There are certain things, and I saw commentators ask the same question. I said, beautiful. Someone asked the question. They demolished it. Right? Totally flattened it like a pancake with all these different proofs. Oh, you can never say that. And you can't say this because of this, because of that. All these different proof texts against us. Like, all right, at least someone asked the question. They didn't say it wasn't a valid question, but they knocked the question out. I mean, they're essentially saying it's not a valid question for different reasons, but it was good to see someone actually ask the question, right? I remember also learning something. I had this question for a while. I was going back and forth, back and forth. I went further. I kept coming back to it. And finally, I said, maybe I missed something in the verses. We go back to wasn't an expert at certainly, in this topic or whatever. So I went to look at the verses again. There it was black and white. Black and white, an explicit verse, an explicit verse, an explicit verse. It's also part of the Torah. 100% is part of the Torah, right? But we also have to learn Chumash better. What the verses mean and what the context is and all that. All right, that's what we're trying to do here, right? But again, there's a lot of knowledge to be gained, right? No question. Yeah. Any other questions here? Let me see. Someone here asks, question of keeping Jewish sage pictures in your home to look at regularly. Yeah. What's the purpose? Because they're holy people, right? A bunch of idiots. Who do they put up on their, on their walls? Basketball players, football players, soccer players. Like, these are people I should idolize. Who do we idolize? Great rabbis, right? So, you see a picture of their face should imbue somebody with fear of heaven. That's why we have them. Not to worship them. We don't worship them, right? That's idolatry. We worship the knowledge they have. Remember, someone said my Rebbe walked into a room and it was like split into the sea. Yeah, I walked in, everyone stood up, right? And then that's how you show respect, right? I walked in, so it's like, oh, they worship him. No, they don't worship him. That's idolatry. They worship the knowledge that he has, the clarity that he has, even at the age of 100, almost the age of 100. That's what they worship. They can't worship the person himself, right? They worship the knowledge that he has. Yeah. So when you look at such a face, I see it when by my Shabbos table every week, or whenever I sit down to eat, his face like glaring, like very, very, very intense. I always say it should give me more fear of heaven. Hopefully it should. But yeah, that's the point. That is the point. All sorts of like into a song or melody. Yeah, some people have a certain tune that when they learn, they like hum a certain tune. I don't know, gets them into learning more. Let's say, also a good thing. I mean, you don't have to. Sometimes people do, for a short period, but not, if you're learning for like 3-4 hours, you're not, singing the tune the whole time. But sometimes, gets you into things, or person's half asleep, wakes you up maybe a little bit, say something like that. It's learn to inspire someone. Yeah, again, most people learn by music, no. But sing a tune, gets them in a certain frame of mind, right? Can inspire them, also. Again, they're going to be singing a tune for, for hours on end. No, stories of great people standing up, in thought for like 2 hours, thinking it this way, thinking it that way, thinking the other way. They're not singing tunes, right? This generation, different generation, but saying it, for the Torah giants, and there's some people have a certain tune, a certain melody they sing it with, and I can't say for everybody. Yeah, they definitely can't say for everybody, but again, are they humming that tune the whole time? I don't think so. I don't think so, but again, it's a form of inspiration. That's what I would say. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, this person doing it for 2 hours straight, no. I wouldn't go that far. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Next Sunday, there will be no class. I won't be around next week, next Sunday at least. Otherwise, anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman. Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com. Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on Torah portion of the week, even though I'm very behind. Q&As, Ethics for Our Fathers, Book of Leviticus. You want to send me an email, rabbichaimkoffman@gmail.com, RBBICHIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, depending where you are. And everyone